action by the president yesterday will only encourage more people to come here illegally and putting their lives at risk. The president has taken actions that he himself has said are those of a king or an emperor, not an American president.
All right, folks, joining us now is the chief congressional correspondent from the Washington Examiner, Susan Ferrechio, and she wrote a piece that says that the Republicans are eager to avoid a shutdown repeat and are beginning to take the funding fight off the table. Susan, welcome. And isn't that their only weapon, their only recourse?
Well, you would think. I mean, the Congress and the power of the purse. That's the leverage there, where they say, here, you can't have any money to do what you just said you wanted to do with stemming deportations. That's what a lot of Republicans are eager to see the leadership do. They want them to say, look, Mr. President, we're not giving you the money to do this. I think, though, that that's something the Republican leadership wants to avoid because they are so afraid of a repeat of October 2013, when they really took a pummeling. Their approval ratings took a big dive when they took this fight on over funding the Affordable Care Act. They don't want that dynamic, Steve, to repeat itself, and so they want to kind of get it off the table. I think they want to pass this next spending bill without including any big fight over immigration and executive action. And I think that that's really the tension right now on Capitol Hill. People who say, hey, GOP leadership, that would be like rolling over and playing dead on this whole issue. But then the GOP leadership would say, well, if we were to make a move like that, the GOP simply can't win because we always get blamed when the funding doesn't go through. But Steve, I would say it's not completely off the table because there are other ways they could do it. Say they decide to take up the appropriations process in pieces, which is the way you're supposed to do it. They could pass, every single thing except one element that addresses the deportations and work permits and other things that people living here illegally would need to acquire under the president's executive action. They could try to address it that way. I know they're talking about it. I've heard it from leaders in the House and Senate. But I also hear this. I also hear them say, none of this is going to involve drama or gridlock over government funding. So the big question is, how do they achieve that? And I think nobody knows. They're having a week-long break now. You know that staffers are going to be working on this, though, during the break. And when they get back, they really only have a few days to try to work something out here to get legislation on the floor. So it's a humongous question mark right now what they're going to do. The most interesting element of this, Steve, is the way that the House Speaker, John Boehner, has gotten out there saying, we're going to do something. We're going to do something. But then you go across the Capitol and you listen to Mitch McConnell, who's the minority leader, and he's about to become the majority leader. The way he characterizes the debate, he says, well, we're going to take action. Congress will act in response to the president in January. So again, it leaves a big question mark about this open-ended funding bill that needs to be addressed before the end of the year, right, and whether or not the funding is going to involve trying to strip the president of the ability to make this executive action possible.
Well, you brought up McConnell. McConnell, he ran on repealing Obamacare. He wins, and he says he can't repeal Obamacare, and he says we're not going to have a government shutdown. When you say you're not going to have a government shutdown, you're throwing up the white flag, and you're telling the president we're not going to fight you tooth and nail. So what was the purpose of that?
Well, I think it's the lesser of two evils. I think they would like to find a way to legislatively address this now, but that in the past, using funding bills as a weapon has never gone well for the GOP, even going back into the 1990s, where they really got pummeled in the polls in the midterm election after this shutdown fight between Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton.
But what about
that
Susan,
goes way back.
I know, and it's always been, and you and I think have agreed over the years, the Republicans are really bad at getting the message out. Now they have a hostile media, the so-called mainstream media, who are already framing this debate. Will the Republicans, like you put it, the funding fight, they say, will the Republicans close down the government? And even Hank Scheinkopf, Democratic strategist, sat here yesterday and said, of course, it would be Obama who would shut down the government, but the Republicans who would be blamed. But is this a different issue? Couldn't they frame it and say, look, the public is outraged. 75% of you did not want the president to do this. It's unprecedented, so we are not funding it. And if the president, doesn't like it, he will shut down the government over this. Couldn't they try to get their message out?
Well, first, a couple of things are going to happen. The president just announced what he was going to do last night. In a few days, we're going to start hearing what the public thinks about this, because their phones are ringing. The pollsters are trying to find out. What do you think of this plan? The Republicans are going to pay very close attention to that. They're paying close attention to what gets written in the media. They're gauging how strong a case they have to do what you're talking about. But what I think they'll do if they address funding in the spending legislation that needs to pass by the end of the year, it will be on a very small scale and in a very targeted way, so that the whole government is not held hostage to this the way it was during the Obamacare fight. That's a possibility, but I say that's still not guaranteed, because there's a big urge, I think, for some leaders to move this spending fight away from the immigration fight, so that they can preserve their reputation, that the voters, everyone's watching them right now. They're trying to say, hey, can this Congress run the government, or is their first foray into leadership going to be a big shutdown?
Gotcha.
The Republicans are not going to go for that at any cost.
Susan, great talking to you. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks, Steve.
Susan Ferrechio, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back. Healthcare attorney and medical malpractice expert Heather Hansen after the break. But first, buying a home, it could be very stressful. But did you know that now there are apps? That's right, apps for that too. And now I don't know that I would know how to work it, but there are specially designed apps to take the hassle out of home buying. And for more information, let's go to your Max to Life moment.
House hunting shouldn't have to be a hassle. Instead of doing the things the old-fashioned way, why not put the smarts in your smartphone to work by downloading these apps?
First, every potential homebuyer needs Zillow. Zillow is the best app for comparing homes in the neighborhood where you want to live. Plus, it's got the Zestimate, which allows you to look at the estimated price of every home in that neighborhood. Then second, there's the Autodesk Home Styler. This app allows you to virtually see how furniture will look in that new home that you might buy. Third, you've got to have a mortgage calculator. There's several, such as from Quicken Loans, Trulia, or Bankrate.com.
Some other helpful apps are Redfin, HomeSnap, and Credit Karma. So whether you're a first-time homebuyer or you're just flipping through houses fast, take these apps for a test drive to help make the process as efficient and stress-free as possible.